All right, Len, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Dana.
So, I would love to hear a little bit about how Podia came to be and then how you're involved, the journey of your involvement with the company.
Sure. So Podia, the story of Podia is actually a lot longer than the story of me with Podia. Podia was founded in 2014, and it's gone through a number of different iterations on the project side, on the product side. But originally, it was a software product for GMAT tutors, and they needed a place to host their content, sell their sessions, schedule them. But as you can imagine, as we've all kind of seen who create content online over the last few years, the market for people selling content is actually much, much, much bigger than GMAT tutors or tutors at all. And so the company opened itself up to the whole world of digital creators a couple of years ago. And in 2017, towards the end of the year, up until then, the company was actually still called something else. It was called Coach. And in 2017, the name was changed to Podia. It turned out that it was very, very challenging to compete for search rankings with the biggest handbag brand in the world. And and so the company was rebranded as Podia. And that's actually when I joined. So prior to Podia, I had been running marketing at a company called Groove for 6 years. And I'd also sold online courses, created online courses, sold online courses. And when I was looking for a platform to host my online courses and sell my online courses, I looked at a lot of the kind of the big names out there and compared them to Coach at the time, and it really was not even a contest. And I thought, yeah, I'm absolutely going to host with Coach, and so I became a customer of theirs, and through that, got to know Spencer, the CEO, got to know the team, and over time, when I was when I moved on from Groove and was ready to take on a new challenge, I talked to Spencer, and it sounded like a really, really great fit and a great team for me to join, to be able to come and serve content creators who I have a lot of passion for, and teach people how to do something that I have a lot of passion for. So the stars aligned, and here we are.
What has the transition been like for starting as a customer of the company to now a employee and spokesperson and advocate for the company? Has do you still have your e-courses? Are you still marketing those, or has it been a full transition?
Yeah, so all I'm doing now is I have a membership that I run through Podia called Len's Inner Circle, and I use that to send out weekly updates to my community and stuff that I'm reading, stuff that I'm enjoying, stuff that I'm learning. And it's a great opportunity for me to be able to use the product. I'm not doing any promotion of paid online courses right now, just because not a ton of bandwidth for it these days. But it certainly gives you an interesting perspective to join a company where you're a customer for a long time. I came with a laundry list of customer requests that I learned very quickly why some of them were good ideas and some of them were very bad. But I also came in with what I hope would be a lot of empathy for the customers that we do have, having been in their shoes and creating and selling things, and hopefully understanding the challenges a little bit better than I would have if I had never used the product or never created and sold courses myself.
So I'd love to hear before we dive into, the online course platform and, digital products and things. I'd love to hear about your journey with launching your own online course and how you built an audience, found your niche, all those great things.
Sure thing. So the biggest course that I launched previously was called Content Marketing Master, and we actually launched that as part of Groove, which was where I ran marketing before, and we built a course. So I built this course over a few months. We saw that Groove is a customer support software company, and we weren't building a course on customer support, and our blog wasn't really about customer support. Our blog was about the greater startup journey, entrepreneurship, growth, marketing, and specifically content marketing. We noticed that a lot of people were asking about content marketing. We were thinking about different ways that we could add value to the audience, different ways that we could create additional revenue streams for the company. And it was sort of born organically out of that, where we saw that a lot of people had, and you'll see this when we talk about online courses, one of the very first things we saw was that, hey, there's a problem that people are asking us to solve for them. And then I did a had a lot of conversations with our audience, had a lot of conversations with our customers, started learning what their challenges were with content marketing, built a course out of that based on what they were struggling with and where that aligned with kind of what we had learned and what we had succeeded at, and then delivered it to that audience. And then we promoted it to other communities where there were probably people facing the same problem. And the course did a little over $250,000 in sales. So it was, it was certainly successful from the perspective of what we expected and what we had hoped for. But it's also, we also didn't do anything that everybody in the world can't do. We didn't do anything that, is like we didn't have any crazy tactics or crazy secrets. It was all very, very straightforward.
Well, what I like about that is you created something that your current audience was asking for, and you delivered on that before expanding to that broader, wider audience. And I think that's something that's really important for us to remember is if you already have a community of people, work on learning and trying to solve their problems first before you create a product and then just try to market it wide.
Definitely. And very often the best product feedback and the best ideas for your course, the best ideas for like course topics and the best ideas for what you need to put in your course are often right in front of you. They're in the audience that you already have, even if it's a small one.
Mm-hmm. And so going back to, when you were doing your courses and you were looking at the different providers out there, what was it about Podia over maybe like Teachable, Thinkific, Jobby, like other places that you were like you gravitated, like this was the thing that you needed to do?
Yeah, so that's a great question because it is a crowded market. There's a lot of players and there's a lot of products that frankly do the job. The key things for me, at least, when I was looking at different products, were number one, when I had questions about whether a course whether a product would do something or not, I sent in an email and I asked, and very often I would get a response within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, which is just like insane in internet time because we're conditioned to 24 hours, 36 hours, 72 hours, which is what I was getting from other platforms. And so I would very often get a response right away, and very often from the CEO himself. The other two things were there were no transaction fees, so I didn't have to kind of get punished for the success of the course if we ended up doing far better than we thought we would, which we did. And then third, the offers of free migration. So all the content that we had built, it was migrated into Coach for free. And then the other thing was looking at what I was told about the roadmap and what was coming with Coach, and what eventually did actually come with Podia, is that when we wanted to expand beyond that course and sell the digital products, sell like ebooks or memberships, all of that could be done right within one platform rather than having to go find a whole other piece of software to handle that.
Well, and I remember when that was the biggest appeal for me, because I think a lot of us, we've done several migrations with various platforms. Like we're getting off of lead pages and we're using our own internal place, or like migrating from one e-commerce platform to another. And I think it's really daunting for most of us to be like, oh, but we have so much stuff to untangle. And so when we had a lot of content in Teachable, and then I was like thinking about Podia, and then when the free migration offer came, that I think was the thing that sealed the deal, like that I didn't have to increase my bandwidth or like get my team together to like start this huge process. It was literally done over a weekend. Like I emailed on Friday and it was done on Sunday night, and it was amazing.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I love hearing great migration stories. I mean, we talk about it as, we have a moving truck and we'll make it easy for you. We'll pull right up to your house and take all your stuff. We've had customers that tell us that it's a lot more like a rescue mission.
It's like save my people, my students, like no student left behind kind of a thing. So in this like marketplace where there are so many options for various things, whether it's Stripe versus Square, Podia versus Teachable, Shopify versus WooCommerce, like when we have all these different options, what do you think brands can do, or what have you done to differentiate from other platforms and differentiate yourself from the competition?
Sure, that's a great question. So I think there are two things. The first is to be extremely deliberate with your brand, and I mean, by your brand, I mean literally everything that you put out into the world. Be extremely deliberate about, what your brand looks like, be extremely deliberate about what your brand believes, be extremely deliberate about what kind of content you put out, and how you talk about yourself and how you talk about your customers and to your customers, because all of that is branding. And in so many industries, that kind of looks the same across so many different companies, because you look at your competition and you think, oh, well, they're doing well, and so we should probably have the same website pages, or we should probably have the same kinds of content, or we should probably have the same features, or the same colors even, which is something that I don't understand, but you see it everywhere, is everybody using the same, slightly different shade of blue. So that's a big part of it, is just being really conscious about the decisions that you make in your design and in your writing and in your product. And the other one is to, when you have a crowded market and your customers have a lot of options when they're making this decision, I think one of the most valuable things that you can do is deliver value to them before they have to make the decision. If you have 5 products that you're choosing between, and one of them has done something extraordinarily valuable for you before you're making that decision, they're clearly going to be the front runner. They're going to be a no-brainer, right? And that's something that we did at Groove, and it's something that we're doing at Podia by trying to focus really hard on providing a ton of valuable free education for people, whether that's through our blog, through our guides, through our webinars, through our YouTube channel. Just really make it easy to get no strings attached, free content that can help you get your course off the ground, get your membership off the ground, get your downloads off the ground, without asking for anything in return, so that when you are ready to host something, sell something, it's kind of a no-brainer to go for the brand that already helped you get there.
Well, and then you're creating a customer base for yourself in a way, because if they are successful using Podia, then they will keep using Podia. And if they launch a course and it flops, then chances are they're not going to use the program anymore. So the more you can educate and train and set them up for success, the more likely it is that they're going to be a long-term customer.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got it.
So let's talk about digital products, and speaking of crowded marketplaces, there are no shortage of e-courses there. And so I'd love to run through some objections that I've heard, or maybe have experienced myself, about e-courses. And one of them is why does the world need another e-course? Why should I try to launch an e-course when there's so many out there?
That's a great question. So the world doesn't need just another e-course, but there's a very good chance that the world needs your e-course. And what I mean by that is, there are no new problems. There are no problems that somebody hasn't tried to solve. And one of my favorite examples of this is productivity, right? Productivity has been a problem forever. Seneca wrote about productivity 2,000 years ago. Gautier wrote about productivity in the 1400s. Ben Franklin wrote about it 200 years ago. And my favorite stat is that for the last 17 years, there's been a new bestseller on the New York Times bestseller list about productivity. So 17 books in the last 17 years. That's insane. And so do we need another book about productivity? Well, the market will actually say probably yeah, because I bet next year there's going to be another bestseller. The reason is that one e-course might work for somebody, another e-course might work for somebody else, and another e-course might work for somebody else. And so everybody learns differently, everybody reacts to things differently, and you creating an e-course, by definition, you can't create an e-course that already exists, right? Because none of the people who have created courses already have had your perspective, your experience. Your course, just by virtue of that, is going to be different, and so probably will be a lot more useful for a specific subset of people than any other course that's out there.
Well, and a lot of our listeners are authors, because we work with authors, and it's there's this idea that there's no new stories, just different ways to tell them and different characters. And it seems like it's a similar thing where there may be 50 courses on productivity, but everyone has a different viewpoint, style, and people will gravitate towards your e-course if that's the style that attracts them. Exactly.
And we all have different voices, and we all have different perspectives.
And so one of the other objections I hear a lot is, I'm a maker, or I do this service that I can't really teach, and I don't really know what I can teach. I have nothing to offer. So what would you say to somebody who's I don't have anything, I don't have an e-course in the can?
Well, we all have people in our lives that we think of as our kind of quote unquote go-to people for different things, right? We all have that person in our life that when I have a question about personal finance, I'm going to go to Sandy. Or if I have a question about finding great travel deals, I'm going to go to Nancy. We have these people in our lives, and we are those people for people around us, right? Everybody is the go-to person for something, for your community, for your friends, your family, your coworkers, whatever it might be. But we often don't think of ourselves that way. We think, we have everybody else in our lives is a go-to person for something, but we're not a go-to person for everything. So I think a lot of times it just comes down to understanding what it is that you already teach people how to do, that you already help people how to do. And a lot of times that's as simple as just asking the people that talking to the people that and talking to the people that you help, and finding out what it is that they value your expertise in. But everybody has something to teach.
You told an interesting story when we met down in NOLA about the woman who did the e-course on Excel.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite stories. So we have a creator on Podia who, she wanted to create a course for months, and she didn't know what to create it about. And this entire time, she was the go-to person at her office for all questions about Excel. So anybody had questions about macros or templates or formulas or, I don't understand any of this stuff, but people had questions about it and they wanted to learn, and they always went to her. And one day, one of her coworkers just said, why don't you create a course on this stuff? I'd be the first person to buy it. And this creator now sells her course on Excel to thousands of people every single month.
That's amazing. I love it. Because I think that, again, that it goes back to like serving the audience, like you're not just selling. Because if people are coming to you asking questions over and over and over again, it's almost like selfish to keep that information to yourself. You need to put it out there so people can easily get it and learn, especially if they can't just walk over to your desk and ask you a question about Excel. If there's people in your world that are asking these questions, there's people in other worlds or in the greater world that are also asking these questions.
Totally. And a really valuable exercise that I would challenge anybody to do. And it sounds kind of silly, I think, when you first hear it, but it's actually incredibly valuable if you actually go through the process of doing it, is just for a week, have a notepad with you. You can do it on your phone, but I find having a notepad is easier because it's a little bit, there's less friction in actually just taking it out and writing this stuff down. But for a week, write down every question that anybody asks you. Any statement that ends with a question mark that you hear that's directed towards you, write it down. And at the end of the week, I think you're going to be very surprised at the themes that you see. Or you might not be surprised if you already know what you're an expert in, but if you're struggling to come up with an idea, I think you might be very, very surprised at the themes.
I love that idea. I'm a little scared of what would come of it. We get asked a lot of random questions.
Yeah,
but
you don't have to share it with anybody.
Well, I wonder too, like if there's something, this leads me into my other objection I hear a lot, is that if you know enough about something where you can share your insight and your experience, but you don't feel like you're an expert, you don't know every inner workings of, let's say, a platform like Instagram or Excel, or do you need to be like a full-fledged expert, or can you just know enough to create an e-course?
Well, so it's interesting. I think we have to redefine what we see as full-fledged experts, right? Because I feel like so many of us, even people who have been doing whatever that we're doing for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. I'm sure that there are people that are listening to this podcast that have been doing whatever that they're doing, for a very, very long time. And yet they're still they have that nervous feeling where they're just waiting until everybody just kind of figures out that they're full of it, right? That they're just winging it and they have no idea what they're doing. And I think it's something that all of us deal with. It's something that all of us struggle with. It's, this imposter syndrome that's so insidious that stops us from doing so many things. But here's the reality. You're way more of an expert than you think. And if you're building a course on a topic and you've done more than a few hours of work on that topic, you're already more of an expert than 99% of the planet on that topic, right? Because we all love to think about our problems, talk about our problems, complain about our problems, but we don't actually, as a whole, do a lot about our problems, right? And so if you're solving a problem for somebody, chances are, just by virtue of having done the research to create a course on it, you're more of an expert on that topic than they are.
I love that. I think it resonates with a lot of people. I know when I started my PR company, I had no schooling in PR. Like there was no communications background, no experience. It was just I knew how to pitch media, and that was something that I could do well. And I had a good idea about what it took to get a book out there and get it into the hands of readers. And of course, I felt for at least the first year very fraudy about the whole thing. Like it started off me helping a friend in quotes. And so I think that it's really a good lesson to people. Like if you are taking action and you are doing something and you're succeeding, then chances are you're a few steps ahead than everyone else who's having that problem, that isn't taking steps to fix it.
Absolutely. And I mean, just going back to the idea of these go-to people in our lives, right? I mean, we have these people in our lives that, for example, let's say we have a friend who always seems to know the answer to how to find great travel deals, right? Like this person, or like help you plan great trips. When you have a problem or you have a question about that, you go to that person and you ask them, right? You don't think, oh wait, but what are Nancy's credentials in travel planning or finding great travel deals, right? Like, does she even have a PhD in this? Like, how much research has she done? No, like we know that this person has offered to help us before, and they've actually helped us, and so they've become that go-to expert in our lives. And so, I think the whole idea of being a quote-unquote full-fledged expert and being credentialed and being worthy of being able to help other people is vastly overrated.
Well, you just need a track record. Like people don't care about the credentials as long as you're getting the job done. Like if you're fixing their problem, then it doesn't matter if you never went to school for it or just started doing it yesterday. If you can replicate that for them, then their problem is solved and they're happy.
Exactly. Yeah. Like doctors and lawyers notwithstanding, I think credentials are vastly overrated.
So people are going to everyone is going to walk around with a notebook. They're going to take a list of questions. They're going to decide, what, this is the thing I'm going to create the course. I'm going to use to create the course. What are some first steps? Should they just dive right into, recording videos, or are there some steps before that you recommend people take?
I think once people have an idea of once you have an idea of what you want to actually create a course on, and once you have an idea of a problem that you want to solve for people, then that's what you really want to focus on, not the grander idea of creating this course, but on that micro idea of how are we going to solve this problem? Because that's essentially what a course is, right? A lot of people make the mistake of assuming that a course is a bundle of information, or even information at all. A course is not information. Your customers are not buying information from you when they buy a course. They're buying an outcome, right? They're buying a result that they want, a solution to a problem that they have. So when you have that problem in your mind, think about not what is all the information that I know about this problem, let me get this into a course. Think about, how does one solve this problem? How would I help a friend solve this problem? And then I would just break that into steps. So what are the component parts of that solution? So if I was going to, help my friend, plant a rooftop garden, what are the steps that I would need to take with them or what are the steps that they would need to take to accomplish that goal, right? Well, they probably have to go and find pick a good spot on their rooftop. They probably have to go buy some potting soil, buy all the materials that they need. They probably have to, plan out what they're gonna plant, make some, I actually have no idea how to build a rooftop garden, but I'm winging it. But there's some very concrete steps they're gonna have to take. So just think about what those steps are, and that becomes your outline. But the really important part of this is that your outline stems from the actual outcome rather than a broad topic. So build an outline of what are the steps that somebody needs to take to accomplish this end result, and then you can actually start building the content for your course. And this is the part that I think people vastly make overly complex. Like this is people really obfuscate this the simplicity of creating course content. You don't actually have to spend a whole bunch of time recording video if you don't have any idea how to record video. You don't have to spend a bunch of time designing gorgeous worksheets if you don't know how to design. But I always recommend people keep it simple and play to their strengths. So if you are a designer, then sure, design. Or if you're a talker, then do video or audio files. Or if you are a writer, as I imagine many of your listeners are, then write. Your course can absolutely just be strictly written content. The course that I mentioned earlier, the Content Marketing Mastery course, it was incredibly low tech. It was just me recording my voice over a PowerPoint presentation. And yet it did really, really well because we started with understanding what the outcome was that people wanted. And we built an outline based on the steps needed to achieve that result. And then we delivered the content. And it didn't really matter how we delivered the content, but we delivered the content in the simplest and best way that we knew how.
Well, and if people really want the outcome, then they'll deal, I find. Like it's, they'll always complain. They'll always say like, oh, I wish you had just audio, or I wish I could download this video. I wish this, but ultimately they're going to still consume your course if you're delivering the outcome because they want that outcome.
Absolutely. Yeah. If it's a problem they want bad enough, they will do whatever you want them to do to get that outcome.
So once you're outlined and you have an idea, okay, like this is what the course is going to look like. These are the steps people are going to take. I have an idea if I'm going to do audio or video or whatever. Let's talk a little bit more about selling the course. So do you advocate for pre-selling, beta groups? What sort of tactics do you recommend to ensure that the course is successful?
Yeah, so I do actually really love the idea of having a beta test or having some free testers in your group, and you can do a paid test or a free test. But essentially, what I really, really like doing is asking a few people that I think would be really great customers of the course and saying, "Hey, I've got this course I've been working on. It's going to help you solve problem X. Would you be willing to take the course? I'm going to offer it to you for free or for a really, really steep discount in exchange for your feedback. And I'm going to ask you for feedback every week. And it's going to be, you need to commit to doing the coursework and I'm going to get feedback from you." And then as they do that, you want to ask them a couple of questions. You want to ask them questions like, what results are you getting out of the course? What specific results are you achieving with the content? And then one thing that I really like drilling down on when I'm talking with course testers is, what did you expect from this course coming into it? And how did the course align with your expectations? Is it what you expected? Is it different from what you expected? Because that's going to help you not only improve the product, it's going to help you not only improve the actual course content so it meets expectations, but it's also going to help you optimize the promise that you make when you're selling the course, which is very, very, very important, because one of the biggest reasons for churn for people abandoning your course is it's not because your course is bad, or it's not because your course doesn't solve a problem. It's simply because it's not what people expected. They get into the course and it's not what they expected, and so that's so jarring to them that they'll just leave, even if your course could be immensely valuable for them. So those are really, really valuable questions to ask to try and get your promise kind of aligned with your product.
That brings up a really interesting point. So one of the things that I struggle with, and I know some of my colleagues struggle with, is selling them on what they want and then delivering what they need. And so how are some ways that you've seen people balance the, selling? I think the struggle I personally have is everyone wants like a pop a pill solution, right? They want me to outline their roadmap to 7 figures and skyrocketing sales and New York Times bestseller list. Like that's what they want. When the reality is it's a long, hard road of kind of chipping away, and they don't necessarily want that. So how do you balance the deliverable, like what the outcome is going to be, with the promise and the sales up front?
That's a great question. And I think this is kind of the eternal marketing challenge. But I think that the best way that I've found to solve for this problem is to try and really, really work really hard to get, and as writers, I think you're immensely equipped to be able to do this, is try and get alignment between you and your customer on what it is that they actually need. Right? What they want is important, and you have to deliver that. But there's often a really big misunderstanding about what they actually need. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I want 7 figures, and so what I need is to be able to I need to pitch and get accepted for a TED Talk, and then I need to do X, Y, and Z, and that's what I need to get to 7 figures." But what's really, really effective as a marketing strategy is agreeing with them on what they want, because you have to deliver what they want. You want 7 figures, but here's a really, really compelling case for why what you need is actually this and not what you think you need. And if you can do that in your sales copy by showing examples of how people actually reach seven figures, or if you can show, just show the math on how your approach to getting seven figures is actually far more realistic than the approach that they think they need, or even why, if you can get alignment that what they need to get seven figures is to first hit six, then you can sell them on, on a course that helps them accomplish that.
So that's an interesting thing too about the balance between data and emotion. I find that a lot of sales copy and sales pages are very hitting the emotions and hitting the pain points, and then also sometimes a little light on data and not overwhelmed with data. So how important do you think it is to include, hard numbers or stats or case studies in order to sell and deliver on your course? And if it is important, like, what are some ways that you think people should start collecting that data early on?
Yeah, so I think a lot of this will depend on your audience. I think different audiences are moved by different things. So if you're selling to engineers, you're going to need a lot more hard data. But one trick or tactic that I think can be really effective is take your sales page and print it out, and then hand it to somebody in your market. Hand it to somebody that you think could be a prospective buyer of your course, and ask them to read it. And this might feel weird at first. I completely recognize that, but just ask them to read it and watch them. Watch them as they read it. Are they nodding their head? Are they kind of squinting to understand something? Are they saying, do they kind of furrow their brow at something? And those kinds of things are pretty instinctive reactions. They're not necessarily things that people do very deliberately. And they're really, really important cues for how well your sales copy is hitting. And so highly, highly recommend printing out your copy and having people read it out, having people read it to themselves in front of you, because you'll learn very quickly whether you need more data or you need more emotion or you're not hitting the right points. Because after they read it, you can ask them. You can say, I noticed that when you read this part, you kind of shook your head. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? And so if you decide that you do need more data, or if you decide that you want to test adding more data and seeing what happens, well, that's a great place. Statista is one of my favorite places to get data. I think it's just statista.com. Giant compendium of statistics of all sorts. Otherwise, Google is your friend in this situation. I've found a lot of incredible statistics for sales pages and for sales copy on Google. And then the third one would be survey your audience and talk to your audience and try and get some data that way. So ask questions, and that can be really, really powerful too. Even if you don't have a big audience, but you email them and you say, hey, what are your challenges with X, Y, and Z? And what are some of the ways that you're solving those problems? And now you have data that can actually be really, really powerful in your sales copy, because somebody will get to your sales page and they'll read and say, hey, if you're struggling with this, if you're struggling to put together a rooftop garden, you're not alone. Actually, 85% of the people that I surveyed have said that one of the biggest challenges they've had getting started is just not knowing what materials to buy and where to, and how to plan out their garden. And so a bunch of different ways you can get data. That's a really, really powerful one. And then finding kind of industry data on Statista is useful too.
Much respect for continuing the rooftop garden analogy.
Of course. I'm going to beat this horse until it is so far beyond dead.
I also think it's a good sense of community, because I think a lot of, if you know that you are not alone, it helps people know that they are not alone. It helps them like mirror that you understand them. And it puts them a little bit more at ease that their problem isn't unique. And I think that when we're talking about being a human and cultivating community, that's such an important part of that. Not saying like you are an idiot because you don't know where to buy gardening supplies. It's saying, no, everyone has confusion around gardening supplies or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the other things you guys do. One of them is membership sites, which I think I mentioned to you. Like we're toying with the idea of a membership site in 2019. We're surveying our audience right now, and we've gotten a lot of feedback that people would be interested in that. So that's exciting.
Awesome.
What is a membership site in the context of Podia? And then how do you see some of your customers using it and being successful with membership sites?
Sure. So if we think about a course as something that you buy one time and it gives you a specific outcome that you define at the outset, like a really, really specific result, then a membership is a product that you pay for every month or every year, and you get ongoing value. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a specific result. It's not going to be, hey, learn X skill or learn how to do Y. It's something where you have an ongoing relationship with the creator behind the membership or the brand behind the membership. It's where you get ongoing value, whether that's access to exclusive content that's not available anywhere else, whether that's access to coaching or a community that's not available anywhere else, whether that's early access to certain products or priority support for a different product, or whether you get to be part of a user group where you get to give feedback on products that are coming out or podcasts that are coming out or things like that. There are a lot of different ways to structure a membership, but the core of it comes down to, rather than being a one-time sort of transaction with the creator, it is an ongoing relationship that you build with that creator.
So if someone's thinking, okay, do I do this as an e-course or do I do this as like an ongoing membership site? What are some things that they should be thinking about to decide the best route?
Yeah, and this is a really, really common struggle that people try and kind of do the math for in their head. But I think the easiest way to think about it is, is there a really specific defined outcome for this, for the value that you're creating, for the content that you're creating? Is it, I'm going to and I'm gonna keep going with this. Is this, I'm gonna teach you how to build a rooftop garden?
Do it.
Right? Or is this, how to cultivate a rooftop garden, through all 4 seasons and keep it flourishing and continue improving it? Now, which one is the value that you're getting? If it's the first, then a course is the best way to deliver that, because you probably will not be able to fit all the content from the second thing into a course. And somebody, there's no reason for somebody to pay you for a year to teach you that, concrete specific outcome. Whereas if you're going with the second thing and you want to deliver ongoing value to somebody, you want to keep them learning or keep them engaged, then I would absolutely go with a membership. But I think the other thing to think about is, these two products can absolutely be used together. And one of my absolute favorite moves is having a course like how to create a rooftop garden, and then at the end of the course, offering a membership community where people who went through the course together can be in a community together. They can get, give feedback from one another, give status reports, get updates, and where the creator can give continued advice, continued tips, continued content, and maintain that relationship long after the course is over.
I like that, because I think that a lot of the times, you start something, you launch something, and then, but what do you do with it? Like, what are the next steps? So the program we're thinking about launching is, we have a book launch boot camp, which is a 4-month, like, let's take you through the launch of your book program. But then you launch your book, and that's not the end, right? You have to cultivate your audience, keep engaging your readers, growing new readers, write the next book. Like, there's all these steps throughout the year. And so we're doing our debrief with this session. Our session's wrapping up at the end of this month, and we're doing our debrief. And that's been a lot of the feedback is like, I wish we dove deeper into this, right? We didn't get a chance to talk about this, or now that I'm done with the launch, I have to think about this, and now I don't have the program anymore, and that sort of thing. So it's something we're definitely toying with. And I like the idea of doing the e-course first and then the membership, because then everyone's coming through on the same playing field. Like, no one's coming into your rooftop gardening membership group if they don't even know how to build one. Like, they've all gone through the course to actually build one, and now everyone is at the same start line.
Exactly. I think it's a wonderful idea. And a lot of some course creators, what they'll do is they'll have a course and then they'll dump everybody into a Facebook group, like a free Facebook group, and that's fine. But I actually am a huge fan of doing a paid membership instead. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The first one is your members are going to be far more active. right? If they have skin in the game, if they're paying every month, they're going to be far more active in your community. They're going to be a lot more motivated to actually get value out of it. And so continue promoting their book, start writing that second book rather than, Facebook, where you have 1,000,001 distractions. Every time you log in, then it's very, very easy to just mute notifications. You don't really have that skin in the game. And then the second part of it is, as the creator that's creating all of this content and creating all this value for your members, you have a lot more of an economic incentive to really give it your all and really create amazing content for this group, because it's part of your business rather than like a lead gen tool.
Mm-hmm. So before we wrap up, I'd just like to hear some taboos or some mistakes you've seen creators make when it comes to launching any digital product.
Ooh, okay, great. So there are definitely a few. So one of the first ones, and it's interesting you say launching a digital project, but I think that probably 99% of the mistakes are ones that are made before anything even launches. But I'll give you a few. So one of them is, and I think all of us who have written anything or taken on any large creative project that has failed have done this, and I've done this many, many times. We come up with an idea for a digital product, and we open up a Google Doc, and we think about everything we could possibly know about that topic, and we dump it onto the Google Doc, and we just kind of word vomit onto it. And we have 1,000 words, 2,000 words, 5,000 words of content, and we close that Google Doc and we never open it again. And I see creators do this all the time, and people talk to me about this all the time. We have creators join Podia all the time that say, hey, I have this thing I haven't touched in 3 years, and I figured it's finally time to actually turn this into a course. And they show it to me, and it's just a brainstorm. It's a 3,000 word brainstorm. The reason that's a huge mistake is because you overwhelm yourself and you create far too large of a project for yourself. And that's why it can be so valuable to start with that outcome and that outline. I think that will ensure that you don't make that mistake. It makes life so much easier for you as a creator, as a course creator. Another mistake that people will make is they will create a product, they will launch it, they will hear crickets and nobody buys, and they say, oh, well, I guess, this wasn't meant to be. And then they abandon the project. And the reality is, number one, the longer your course stays out, the more sales you'll get. And number two, they're very, very, it's less than 0.5% of online courses that make the majority of their revenue when they launch, within 24 hours of launch. Very, very few courses do it. And the ones that do are ones that are very, very focused on really intense, time limited, week-long launches or 3-day long launches, and they're ones with big lists and really, really build their model on that. But the reality is most creators have evergreen course sales, which means their course is always available to buy. You can just go in their store and go in their digital storefront and buy their course. They make most of their sales through continued, prolonged promotion of that course. So after you've launched your course, the work is only getting started. Now, every time you go on a podcast, every time you write a guest article somewhere, every time you join a new community, that's another opportunity for you to tell people about your course. And over time, those sales will build. And so the mistake there is just getting discouraged when you don't see sales when you launch.
So I'd like to touch on that quickly about the evergreen versus the launch cart close cycle, because I know everyone has different opinions about it, and I think different things work for different people. But I just love to get your take on, do you just have your course up all the time? How do you create scarcity? Do you need to create scarcity? Do you need to create urgency? All those things. What are your thoughts on the launch cycle versus the evergreen, and pros, cons, which is better?
Yeah, this is probably one of the big debates in the digital products community, and where I fall on it is I'm a big fan of evergreen, and there are a few reasons for that. Number one, I think it's less overwhelming for creators. I think it's less brutal. I mean, I've done launch week. I've launched courses that have time limited launches, and I've done launch week, and it's brutal, and it's you lose sleep, and it's really, really stressful. I don't think it's worth it for most creators. I think that there are some creators who do really, really well at it, but the overwhelming majority of creators will do better with evergreen sales for that reason, and also because frankly, the data that we've looked at shows that the courses that that are evergreen and stay out all year tend to earn more revenue as a whole over courses that are open for a single week. And so I think creators should just do themselves a favor, keep it easy on themselves, keep it easier on themselves, keep their courses open, evergreen, and let themselves do promotion over the whole year rather than just concentrating everything into this week-long sonic boom.
So do you still see an importance for like urgency and scarcity when you are promoting things, or do you feel like, no, just like let them get it when they get it and they'll just get it when they're ready?
I think that there's value in creating a deliberate journey for your customer, for your prospect, and urgency is part of that. But I don't think that you necessarily need to close the cart to create urgency, right? I think that that's certainly one way to create urgency, but another way to create urgency is to, all of this can be created by, can be kind of recreated by doing with a really good automated email sequence. Right? Even if the course is evergreen, you can have an automated email sequence that is designed to create urgency by agitating the problem, by making it very, very clear, what's at risk if they don't act now. And it might not be that the cart is closing on the course, but it might be that, if they wait, another week, that's going to be another week of feeling really badly about yourself that you haven't taken the first step to building your book or your rooftop garden. And it could be that it's another week of lost revenue from not having launched this business idea. So I think there are a lot of really powerful ways to create urgency without necessarily resorting to having to do a course launch.
I like that a lot because I think that the thing that always has gotten me about the cart open, cart close thing, if it's just a digital product, obviously like Book Launch Bootcamp is a live thing, so we have to have a time limit on it. But for products that you just like, I'm putting the publish and unpublish button. Like there's no reason that it's going away and like registration's closing. Like that's always felt a little off to me. And so
a little gross, right?
Yeah, like I'm glad to hear you say that because I think that the thing that we're seeing on books, and I think in a lot of film and TV too, is that people want to watch things or consume things when they're ready. So like we are always, for our authors, trying to drive pre-orders because New York Times bestseller lists and things like are all about concentrated sales. Mm-hmm. But in a lot of the times, you have to give them a really good reason to pre-order it because most people have their devices or their proDCkindle, and when they're ready to read it, they'll buy it. Mm-hmm. And so I think the same can be true for e-courses. We did a program that didn't actually go. We didn't get enough to like fill it. And so I didn't go forward with it. But the feedback was, oh, the timing's really bad. It was a live program, so it needed to be timed, but timing's really bad. Are you going to offer this in June? Are you going to do this? And, the answer was like, no, it was a timed program. But if people were able to just get it when they were ready, I always wonder, like, would they have jumped aboard if they could have registered 3 months down the road or 6 months down the road?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like you said, I think a lot of people have to do, if there's a live component to your course, then certainly I think there's a good reason to do a time limited launch, but otherwise, let people consume your content when they're ready.
Very cool. And then can you just share as like a closing, you had mentioned the messaging and the brand values and ideas. Can you share a little bit about Podia's brand values and your brand message?
Sure thing. Our brand message is that we love creators and we want to empower creators. And whether that's the grandmother teaching knitting or the scrappy startup entrepreneur teaching marketing, or the piano teacher, or whoever it might be, whatever you want to create, whatever you want to sell, we want to make it easier for creators to monetize their expertise and their passion. And historically, that is something that creators have done with advertisers and sponsors and affiliates, and we frankly want to make it easier to earn a living from your passion without having to put a third party between you and your audience. We think that it's far more rewarding to earn a living from your passion by selling things directly to your audience and building a better relationship with your audience by creating products that they'll love. And our job and our mission is to support creators in doing that any way that we can.
Love it. Well, we are going to link to everything in the show notes at brandingoutsidethebox.com/podia. And Len, thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Thank you, Dana. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun to chat.